Ladies and gentlemen, please observe that the saving of seats is not allowed.
They were all heroes. They all went out to do their job, and they didn't return.
They stood for honor. They stood for hope.
It's a big family, it really is. Very important. And when we lose one of them, all of us hurt here.
It's not how they died, but how they lived.
The lion's a symbol of strength, courage, valor. And then you have the adult lion watching over the cubs, the innocent citizens of our nation.
We were trying to make that passage between the adult lions and the cubs feel like you're entering a sacred space. It does speak to people.
It's extraordinary to be able to have a memorial and then to have a museum immediately adjacent to that.
Building a museum is a tribute to the legacy of honor and sacrifice that the brave men and women have made, ensuring that law and order continues in our country.
Once you enter the museum, you're immediately involved with the entire experience.
It's going to show all sorts of different aspects of law enforcement.
Most of the museum is going to be experiential, meaning it's going to be a high-tech, interactive educational experience.
The hands-on aspect of the museum is very unique.
We'll allow them to walk into a forensic science lab, getting clues from real crimes, to experience the shoot-don't-shoot judgment simulator.
How has technology changed over the years? And that's going to be a part of the museum as well. It is absolutely incredible.
I think it's important for you to realize what we go through every day in the life of a police officer.
This museum will serve a tremendous role in paying homage to those who are currently serving as well as those who came before us.
The heart and soul of the museum is our Hall of Remembrance. It's a very special area sponsored by our Police Unity Tour, and that's where people will learn the stories behind the names on the memorial wall.
You'll not walk 1 foot on that memorial or in that museum and ever walk out with a negative feeling.
We will not forget. That is my commitment to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, certainly the museum.
I can't wait to see the museum actually come to fruition.
The experience will be really quite extraordinary, and I think the community is going to be astounded by it when it's completed.
It's part of the honor. It's telling you why. This is what these officers did that made them so special, and this will give them the reality of the job and hopefully inspire many to go on and go into the law enforcement profession.
A memorial has allowed everyone to say, take your broken heart and bring it to us, and we will be there to hold you until you know how to mend it again.
I am surrounded by heroes.
Heroism, courage, strength.
Passion, compassion, dedication.
Hope, peace.
Honor, respect.
I think of remembrance, and I think of sacrifice.
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 Sacrifice. It's a matter of honor to be a law enforcement professional.
So many times society will make big headlines about what's wrong with America, and this is what's right. This is what is decent and honorable and intrepid about America, that these men and women go out to make our todays safe. And they go out loving their country and all it stands for more than life itself.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Board of Directors of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund and their distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jeff Sessions, Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable John Kelly, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the Honorable John Ashcroft, Chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, and the President and CEO of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, Craig Floyd.
Their names are Leslie Zarebny and Jose Gil Vega. She was just starting her law enforcement career with less than 2 years on the job. After 35 years of service, he was set to retire in just 3 months. On October 8, 2016, Officers Zarebny and Vega, who served with the Palm Springs, California Police Department, were shot and killed in an ambush attack. Both of these fallen heroes of America were dedicated police professionals, willing to do whatever was necessary to keep their communities safe. Officer Zarebny had given birth to her daughter, Cora, just 4 months earlier, before choosing to come back from maternity leave early to help out. Officer Vega, the father of 8, had volunteered to work overtime on what turned out to be his final shift. Tonight, we honor and remember them both, along with 392 others whose names will be read as part of this ceremony and be forever etched on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial and in the hearts of a grateful nation. To them and their families, and to all law enforcement professionals who serve and protect us, tonight we say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's Board of Directors, who have joined me here on the dais, it is my honor and privilege to welcome all of you to this, our 29th annual Candlelight Vigil. And in addition to the more than 25,000 members of the law enforcement family and citizen supporters who have gathered here on the National Mall, from across the country and some from around the world, we also welcome thousands more who are watching a live webcast of the vigil, thanks to our good friend and partner, Officer.com. Our program begins this evening with the presentation of the colors by the United States Park Police, the national anthem performed by the Dallas Police Choir, which has come here tonight to remember and pay special tribute to the 5 fallen heroes gunned down in their city last July. And the invocation by Chaplain Derek Taylor of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation. Please rise for presentation of the colors.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we call upon your name tonight as we honor those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, those who took the oath to uphold the law, to serve, and to protect us. Their deaths strike our hearts as we gather tonight in vigil. As you promise to be ever present with your children, we pray for that presence here tonight, to bring comfort in the midst of sorrow, to bring hope in the midst of uncertainty, to bring peace in the midst of unrest. O Lord, as we lift up the names of the fallen, may their spirits of dedication and courage move us to be courageous with acts of kindness and care for one another. We ask you, Lord, to guide us toward peace and protection, righteousness and goodwill, so that our society will continue to strive to be the place you intended to be. Empower us that we may be beacons of true citizenship, shining as the lights shine tonight, not just watching as we gather in vigil, but in active care and love for one another, inspired by the mercy and love you bestow. We pray for your Spirit to comfort all who mourn, to bring us together as we honor our fallen loved ones, to grant us that strength to continue living with a hope beyond our human grasp, but one you bring to your loved ones as Lord and Savior, as our loving God. This we pray in your holy and precious name, dear Lord, to your glory, honor, and praise, now and forever. Amen. Please be seated. Last year, our organization was greatly honored when the former Attorney General of the United States, John Ashcroft, accepted our invitation to serve as chairman of the Memorial Fund. His support for the law enforcement profession has been steadfast throughout his many years of public service. He was Missouri's governor
and United States Senator, and then served as Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, John Ashcroft.
Attorney General Sessions and Homeland Security Secretary General Kelly, thank you very much for being here. What a sight to behold. Be surrounded by the United States Capitol, the Washington Monument, thousands of patriots and protectors who are so devoted to this great nation of ours and its core value of liberty. I consider it a privilege and an honor to be able to welcome all of you here tonight, and I thank you for coming. My highest priority, however, is to acknowledge a very special group of guests who indeed honor us with their presence. Of course, I'm speaking about the surviving family members of those officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our community of liberty. For some of you, that loss occurred last year. The wounds are still fresh in your hearts and lives. For others, it was many years ago. But no matter how long, or no matter the passage of time, we want you to know that your loved ones will always be honored and remembered, and so will you. I invite those of you who are the survivors to look around and see the thousands of members of your extended family of law enforcement citizens and citizens at large supporting you and standing shoulder to shoulder with you in a spirit of gratitude and appreciation for the sacrifices made by you and your family. Thank you for being here. At this time, I would like to ask all of the survivors of fallen officers to please stand and allow the rest of us to recognize and to thank you for the supreme sacrifice that you and your loved ones have made to keep America safe and free. I appreciate this opportunity to express my gratitude and to say thank you. I hope you know that I understand how inadequate my own words of thanks are. I'm reminded of Abraham Lincoln, who on the battlefield of Gettysburg said, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." While what we say here is important, what was done, the actions, the commitment, the dedication, the perseverance, the persistence, the willingness to stand between evil and the culture and experience of liberty known as America is something that words can never reward or adequately respect. When I was invited to serve as the chairman of the Memorial Fund, I accepted with a great sense of responsibility and a sense of how I am humbled by individuals and their sacrifices. I'm humbled by the fact that families continue in sacrifice, and I'm grateful. I'm deeply troubled by the fact that the rule of law in our nation has been devalued, and that it is no longer held in the kind of respect which is necessary for us to maintain a free society. The rule of law can never become the exception. The rule of law must be the rule, and we must act by it, respect it, and live by it, for it safeguards that which we hold most dear. We must never forget the more than 21,000 law enforcement professionals that have sacrificed their lives to preserve the rule of law and to safeguard liberty in our nation. It is now beyond my comprehension that a growing number of officers are being targeted for assassination. We will never forget the 5 officers taken from us last year in Dallas, the 3 in Baton Rouge, or the 13 others gunned down in cold-blooded ambush attacks on various parts of our country. It is our duty as Americans to signal the total rejection which we as a culture make of such disrespect for those who protect our freedom. Tonight, we must strengthen our resolve to end this hatred and violence toward law enforcement. May I say to you something which I am saying to myself on a daily basis. There is no better way to honor the fallen than to stop the falling. May I say that again? There is no better way for us to honor the fallen than to stop the falling. Each of us has an opportunity and a duty as a citizen to begin to represent to the culture the necessity for the respect for law enforcement and the rule of law. I want to be a part of the solution to this growing crisis threatening officer safety and public safety and the defense of liberty. Serving as chairman of the Memorial Fund provides me with that important opportunity. The Christopher Society has long said it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Tonight we will all be lighting a candle, but let us carry the light of that candle with us to our families and to our communities, to our synagogues and churches and mosques, wherever that light can shine, a light to sustain liberty and respect for law enforcement. The National Law Enforcement Museum, now under construction across the street from the National Memorial, is a valuable component of public awareness of the essential role played by law enforcement in defending our liberty. The museum is scheduled for completion by the fall of next year. That museum is essential. It is a component without which we can proceed well. We must have, in order to strengthen the critical bond between our officers and the public that our law enforcement officials serve. Through the museum's interactive learning experience, millions of visitors, including young people by the score, will better understand and appreciate the vital role of the rule of law in our culture and the necessity of respect for law enforcement in our society. There are very challenging times ahead for the American people and for law enforcement. The Memorial Fund is a fund that has an intention of helping to meet those challenges. I'm honored and privileged to be a part of it. I want to enlist your every aid and participation, helping us know that we have so many caring and supportive partners will make this possible. It may not be easy, but it is achievable and will be done. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless those families and those who have given their all.
As General Ashcroft mentioned, the National Law Enforcement Museum is now close to completion after a determined effort over the past 2 decades by many of us here tonight. And none have been more supportive than Motorola Solutions. They have donated $18 million to ensure that our nation has a museum to tell law enforcement's story. They are the museum's first founding partner, and in recognition of their generosity and leadership, the museum building will be named in their honor. We are proud to have their Executive Vice President, Mark Hacker, here with us tonight, along with Motorola's Vice President and Chief of Staff, Cynthia Yazdi. I want Mark and Cynthia to know that on behalf of our Board of Directors and all members of the law enforcement family, we say thank you. Thank you both. The terrorist attacks on 9/11 claimed the lives of 72 law enforcement officers that day. Tonight, we honor 75 others who died of diseases caused by their rescue and recovery efforts at the 3 attack sites. There have been nearly 100 terrorist attack attempts by Islamic extremists here in the United States since 9/11. Thanks to the extraordinary work performed by our nation's law enforcement professionals, the vast majority of those attacks were foiled before they were launched. Leading the effort to combat terrorism and keep our homeland safe is our next speaker. He is a retired 4-star Marine Corps general, the former commander of the U.S. Southern Command. His experience and expertise make him uniquely qualified to lead our nation's largest law enforcement agency. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce the United States Secretary of Homeland Security, John Kelly.
Well, thank you. It's truly an honor and privilege for me tonight to join you at this very special candlelight vigil hosted by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Thank you, Craig and John, for including me in this special event. Tonight we remember our fallen brothers and sisters. We pay tribute to their strength, their honor, their courage, and comfort those, or try to comfort those, that they've left behind. The Department of Homeland Security, an organization I am privileged to lead, was born out of the deadliest day in law enforcement history. September 11, 2001 was the end of their watch for 72 officers whose names are on the memorial wall. 71 of those officers died while responding to the attacks on the World Trade Center. The 72nd was a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service officer aboard United Flight 93. While we will never know for certain what his actions were, there is every reason to believe that he was among the passengers who fought back no matter what the cost to try to retake that plane. I say there is reason to believe because he was a law enforcement officer. And that is something you never cease to be. Being a law enforcement officer means you never stop running towards the danger that others run in panic away from. It means putting the welfare of others always before your own. Law enforcement is a calling of sacrifices. You sacrifice countless birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. And when you witness and respond to horrors most people cannot even imagine, you sacrifice your peace of mind. This year, we add 394 names to the memorial in honor of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. 7 of the 394 are part of my DHS family. There are more than 20,000 names on the memorial's walls. They are the names of the men and women who served in towns, cities, and territories all across our United States. They protected the hometowns that make up our America. Each name is an officer who went to work one day and never came home. Each one is a hero, but make no mistake, they are not heroes because of how they died. They are heroes because of how they lived their lives of bravery, honor, and compassion. Behind each name engraved in marble are the loved ones left behind. Your watch, the family's watch, has not ended. Your grief endures. You visit the memorial and leave wonderful tokens of remembrance under the watchful eye of the bronze lions. You leave ballet slippers, little teddy bears, bottles of Hershey's syrup. You leave old family photographs, you leave new family photographs, so mom can see how big her kids have grown. You leave signs and posters reading, "We love you, Daddy. We miss you." The fallen are fallen and not forgotten. They will never be forgotten. For those of you who made the privilege here tonight, and for those of you who are watching at home, thank you. On behalf of our nation's leadership, on behalf of the law enforcement family, on behalf of all the citizens of our country that these officers served, we thank you. Your fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, brothers, colleagues, and friends are the best of our country. We will keep them in our hearts forever. And you should know, when they fell, they were not alone. When they fell, their brothers and sisters, fellow officers dressed in blue or brown or black, tried to save their lives and were with them until the end, until they went to their God. We set this night aside to respect, honor, and remember. We respect the officers' memories. We honor their sacrifices, and we remember how fortunate we are that there are men and women like this who stand between us and danger. God bless our law enforcement officers, and God bless our country, the United States of America. Thank you.
When our next speaker was nominated to serve as Attorney General of the United States, one of his colleagues introduced him, saying, "He's a decent individual with a strong commitment to the rule of law." Important credentials for sure for our nation's top law enforcement officer. Among his stated top priorities since becoming Attorney General are promoting officer safety, officer morale, and public's respect for their work, and making sure the actions of individual bad actors do not impugn or undermine the legitimate and honorable work of the majority of law enforcement officers. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce the former United States Senator from Alabama, and now the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions.
Thank you, Craig, for that introduction and for everything you and your team do to ensure we honor our fallen law enforcement officers. John Adler, our good friend, it's a great privilege for me to be here with you. General Kelly, Secretary Kelly, it's an honor to be your partner in the efforts to improve law enforcement in America. Indeed, he's already achieved a 71% reduction in the illegality at our border in 3 months' time. John Ashcroft, I had the honor to serve with on the Senate Judiciary Committee and to participate in his confirmation and to celebrate his tremendous tenure as Attorney General of the United States. And he loves the law officers of America. You could not have a better chairman. So we mourn today to remember those who've lost and to celebrate them. We mourn these fallen officers. We cannot avoid this stark truth. We are here because these men and women gave everything, gave their very lives for us. Each of these officers was more than just a name etched in a stone or on a memorial. They were persons who meant the whole world to someone, to a parent, a sibling, a spouse, or a child. We also remember these heroes because that is our modest way of repaying a debt that can never be fully repaid. And we remember them so that years from now, others will learn their stories and be inspired to follow their examples of selfless service. Finally, we celebrate these heroes. How can we mourn our loss and yet celebrate? Because after a time, the shadow of grief gives way to the brightness of gratitude. We give thanks for who these men and women were, and we celebrate what they did and what they stood for. We gather for this vigil on the National Mall amid monuments and memorials to the statesmen who gave us the gift of liberty. But for this gift to endure, it must be an ordered liberty secured by the rule of law, our constitutional structure. And for the rule of law to be real rather than an abstraction, we need brave men and women who are willing to defend it and uphold it on the foreign battlefields and on the streets of our communities. That is what these fallen heroes did for us. So tonight, we mourn their loss, we remember their stories, we celebrate the gift of ordered liberty they have helped us secure. And lastly, to all those serving here, I have a simple message for each of you. We have your back, and you have our thanks. I believe it is one of the highest callings of my job to call attention to your successes and to encourage our fellow citizens to support you in your difficult and dangerous work. As long as I am Attorney General of the United States, the Department of Justice will have the back of all honest and honorable law enforcement officers. May God bless the souls of those we honor tonight. May God bless each of you, and may God bless this wonderful country of ours. Thank you.
bright like an evening star, free from a world of war.
We are extremely grateful that the Dallas Police Choir came all this way at their own expense to share their very special talents with us here tonight. Beautiful. One other recognition. We're very pleased and honored to have on our dais here one of our board members, the Deputy Chief of the Dallas Police Department, Malik Aziz. Malik, thank you. Our hearts go out to you and your officers. Thank you. Tonight's ceremony could not occur without the generous contributions of many. I certainly want to acknowledge the work of our board of directors, our staff, and volunteers to ensure that our guests are given the best possible experience. And I also want to recognize all of our National Police Week sponsors and partners who have made generous contributions. They're all listed in your program. And I would like to single out our two presenting sponsors. The first is Verizon, a longtime partner and friend of the Memorial Fund. And our second presenting sponsor of tonight's event has been a stalwart supporter of our organization for more than 20 years. They call themselves the Police Unity Tour. Their motto says it all: we ride for those who died. Their goal is to raise national awareness about law enforcement's service and sacrifice, honor the families who have lost a loved one, and to make it safer for the officers who serve. Yesterday, some 2,000 Unity Tour cyclists and support team members rode proudly into the memorial, having pedaled some 300 miles from starting points in New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and the World Trade Center site in New York City, scene of the deadliest incident in law enforcement history. When they finished their journey, they presented the Memorial Fund with a check for $2.6 million. All totaled, since their outset in 1997, the Police Unity Tour has now donated nearly $23 million to the Memorial Fund. So at this time, I would like to ask the Police Unity Tour founder and retired Florham Park, New Jersey, Chief of Police Pat Montori, along with Executive Director Harry Phillips, Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Waldron, and Chief Sponsor Pat Colligan, President of the New Jersey PBA, to please stand and be recognized for all you and your members do to support the Memorial Fund and honor law enforcement's fallen heroes and their families. Thank you. As General Ashcroft stated earlier, there is no more important group of guests with us here tonight than the surviving members of our fallen law enforcement heroes. The Concerns of Police Survivors is our nation's support group for law enforcement survivor community. Brenda Donner is the national president of Concerns of Police Survivors. With the tragic loss of her father some 50 years ago, Brenda could easily have separated herself from her law enforcement family. Instead, she chose a different path. She decided to help those who are now feeling the pain and loss that she experienced so long ago. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce the national president of the Concerns of Police Survivors, Brenda Donner.
Good evening. Thank you, Craig, for inviting me to share a few words as National President of Concerns of Police Survivors and as the child of a fallen officer. Thank you also to our other speakers here tonight, dignitaries and distinguished guests, including survivors of law enforcement line of duty death. If you direct your attention to the video screens, you should see a photo. Yet something is amiss. This is a picture of my dad. This photo was taken when Daddy was almost 30 years old. This is my dad's badge. After serving in the Marine Corps, Daddy began his law enforcement career in 1965. What's missing? My dad. Clifton Thomas Miller of the Rossford, Ohio Police Department is one of more than 21,000 law enforcement officers who have died in the line of duty since 1791 and whose names are engraved on the National Monument to the Fallen a few blocks from here. Our fallen officers are as diverse as our country, men and women, young and older, immigrants and native born. The commonality? They all proudly wore the badge of a law enforcement officer. My dad was one of them. May 14, 1966, 51 years ago tomorrow, on a Saturday morning, my police officer dad died in the line of duty during a vehicle pursuit. He was 30 years old and left behind his 27-year-old widow, parents, siblings, extended family and friends, as well as 5 children. Daddy's 6th child was born 8 months and 2 weeks after his death, while another child died at 3 months of age. I was 8 years old at the time of my dad's death, and I was the oldest of my siblings. Unfortunately, I don't have many memories of my dad. My siblings and I were quite young when he lost his life, and people naturally felt protective of us. In efforts to comfort small children, people might say, heaven needed an angel. Bewildered young children don't understand the concept of death and wonder why Daddy isn't coming home. Words are meant to comfort, but little kids don't comprehend, and we would think, wait a minute, were we so awful that Daddy was better off without us? This is what I heard when someone would say statements, that I was unworthy of Daddy's love, and that's why he died. Little kids often think a parent's death is their fault. Help them understand that they're not at fault and they didn't do anything wrong. No child should grow up thinking that he or she is the reason their police officer dad or mom died in the line of duty. As a young child, I didn't have the narrative tools or vocabulary to articulate my sense of loss and abandonment when my dad died. Even though we still lived in the same house, in the same community, with the same friends and siblings, everything felt different. I became insecure as my normal had shifted. After all, if Daddy left us so abruptly, what's to say that Mom wouldn't? At that time in my life, I didn't understand that when people told me to be strong for my mom, it didn't mean that I had to refrain from grieving my dad. I wasn't able to give myself permission to mourn the loss of my dad until I found the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial and Concerns of Police Survivors. Both organizations are now very close to my heart. Our family knew nothing about the memorial, with good reason. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial was dedicated in 1991, almost 25 years after Daddy died. But now, as I attend Police Week each year, I find the time to visit Panel 54 West, Row 2, and say hi to my dad. Concerns of Police Survivors, or COPS, was founded in 1984, 18 years after my dad died. COPS is here to rebuild shattered lives of survivors and co-workers affected by a line-of-duty death. This includes offering hands-on programs where I find others just like me at the Adult Children's Retreat. The combination of the inspiring marble walls at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, where I can see and touch my dad's name, and the peer support and hugs from fellow survivors has helped me on my journey. I encourage all young children who have lost a law enforcement parent to ask questions about your mom or dad. And I challenge all of you with answers or stories to respond to those questions. It's okay to share a few tears or laughter with a child who has lost a law enforcement parent. Help fill in the blanks. I was thrilled when I recently learned that my dad liked to dip cheddar cheese in his coffee. That's an odd yet fascinating bit of trivia to add to my incomplete picture of my dad. Mother's Day and my dad's end of watch are the same date this year, May 14th. So I want to take just this moment to thank my mom. The strength she found to raise us while suffering her debilitating grief is unimaginable. We all tower over my mom's 5'2" frame. And we have my dad's features of dark hair and dark eyes. Every time Mom looked at us, she saw Daddy. She didn't sign up to bear 7 children, have one die at the age of 3 months, and then have her husband die in the line of duty, all before she was 28 years old. So Mom, thank you. The walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, upon which our officers' names are engraved, this candlelight vigil, the National Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony on Monday, and sessions provided by COPS help us honor our officers and chart our own healing path. I urge each of you to take advantage of all that this week offers. I want to do everything I can so that no other officers' children have only photos as remembrances. You saw my dad's badge and you saw my dad's picture. What's missing? My dad. Thank you, National Law Enforcement Memorials Fund, for the beautiful memorial dedicated to honor our fallen loved ones. God bless.
When we dedicated Law Enforcement's National Monument 26 years ago, there were more than 12,500 names on its walls. As a special tribute to those men and women, we read each of their names in a final roll call of honor. It lasted a full 24 hours. Every year since, we have given that same honor to each name that has been added to that national treasure. We continue that proud tradition tonight with the reading of 394 names that we now officially dedicate on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. 143 of those fallen heroes died in 2016. Another 251 were killed in prior years, but had slipped through the cracks of history and were only recently discovered by memorial research staff and volunteers across the country. The names will be read by the Memorial Fund's Board of Directors and other special guests. They will be read in order of the state in which they served. The worth of these words may not be what they were intended, given what I'm seeing right now. But our candle lighting in honor of these and all of our nation's fallen law enforcement heroes will occur immediately following the names reading. This is your tribute. You do what you wish. I would ask you to please refrain from lighting your candles until after the memorial candle on the stage is lit, and will then pass the flame to all of you. There's still some candles to light. At this time, I would like to invite Attorney General Sessions to begin this evening's roll call of honor.
From the state of Alabama, Kenneth Lavella Bettis, Charles Lee Sims, Troy Clifton Willingham, George Arnold Scott, Albert R. Abernathy, John Wesley O'Brien, Edwin Anthony Kirby, Charles Haggerty, Luther Thomas Bozeman, John William Burke, Hollis Brown Horton.
From the state of Alaska, Alan David Brandt.
From the state of Arkansas, Robert Aaron Barker, Lisa Ann Malden, James Matt Lawrence, Barney Steele, Gilbert Bird Birchfeld, William Presley Cooper.
From the state of Arizona, John McCarty, Leander Frank, David Van Glasser, Darren Lee Reed.
From the state of California, Nathan Daniel Taylor, Rod Barron Lucas, Charles W. Winston, Frederick F. Moore.
Continuing from the state of California, Alfonso L. Lopez, Arthur J. Solomon, Stephen C. Owen, Jack Lanson Hopkins.
Continuing from the state of California, Paul Michael Carlisle, Jose Gilberto Vega, Leslie Marie Zaribny, Frank Lungerhausen, Jonathan Matthias de Guzman, Michael Jason Catherman, Dennis Randall Wallace, Scott Alfred Valentine.
From the state of Colorado,
Cody James Donahue, Derek Mace Gear, Nathaniel Allen Kerrigan. From the state of Connecticut, Ralph Cosmer Young.
From the state of Florida, Cornelius Rain, William Arthur May, John Henry Wiggins, Jorge Ramos, Moses A. Hill, John Robert Cotfilia Jr., Jorge Sanchez.
Continuing from the state of Florida, Henry Malcolm McAleenan Jr., Merle A. Whitten, Eric James Oliver, Sebastian Edward Diana, Michael Scott Williams.
From the state of Georgia, Nicholas Ryan Smar, William Cyrus Barrow, William R. Morris, Anthony Joseph Freeman, Justin Levi Rouse, Timothy Kevin Smith, Dejan Gators, Jody Carl Smith.
Continuing from the state of Georgia, Lori James Mangum Sr., Justin Scott White, Darrell Wayne Smallwood, Patrick Michael Sondran, Gregory Eugene Barney, John C. Parrish.
From the state of Idaho, Eugene Taylor, W.J. McFadden, Albert P. Sweet, Walter Coffin, Scott W. Palmer, Nathan Herbert Sweeter, Charles H. Torrance.
From the state of Illinois, James Irwin Brockmeyer, Austin L. Fitch, Patrick Joseph McGann Jr., William Feely, George Joseph Turley, Jason Galero, Walter Patrick McCarthy, Henry C. Westland, Robert Mann Stafford, Robert Vincent Wizenan, J. William Barnes, Adam Scott Conrad, Scott Fitzgerald.
From the state of Indiana, Carl Allen Kuntz, William Rollin Brand.
From the state of Iowa, Anthony David Beminio, Carlos Bernabe Puente Morales, David Allen Bowen, Susan Louise Farrell, Thomas Nicholson, Robert Fern McKinley, Warren T. Hodgins, Justin Scott Martin, Adam Dean Little, Sean Glenn Miller.
From the state of Kansas, Charles Schramm, Brandon Scott Collins, Brad D. Lancaster, Robert David Melton, James Michael Buffum.
From the state of Kentucky, John Gilliam, Dolly Clifford Harmon, Charles David Howley, James Clem, Preston C. Rains.
From the state of Louisiana, Matthew Lane Gerald, Montrell Jackson, Bradford Allen Garafola Sr., Shannon Matthew Brown, David F. Mischel Jr.
Continuing from the state of Louisiana, Jude William Lewis, Natasha Maria Hunter, Thomas J. Albert Sr., David Kyle Alehi, Derek Morel Mingo. From the state of Maine, Renee Albert Gopil.
From the state of Maryland, Charles W. Fisher, Herbert Bitzel, John O'Meyer, Joseph C. Waldsax, Michael J. Egan, Michael J. Burns, Thomas H. Worthington, Mark Franklin Logston, Patrick Brian Daly, Edward Clarence Wilson, Jakai David Colson.
From the state of Massachusetts, Louis Duncan Phipps, Ronald Tarantino Jr., Edward Thomas Richard Landers, Charles Edward Bradley, Joseph Anthony Ribeiro Sr.
Continuing from the state of Massachusetts, Thomas L. Clardy, William H. Furden, Benjamin John Foss, Richard Terrence Dever.
From the state of Michigan, Joseph Peter Zangaro, Ronald E. Kenzo, Michael Anthony Winter, Kenneth Melvin Stile, Kevin Dwayne Miller, Myron Anthony Jarrett, Joseph J. Murray, Colin James Rose.
From the state of Minnesota, Lowell Lloyd Krause, Douglas Eugene Clausen, Charles C. Chanos, James L. Gardner.
From the state of Mississippi, John Russell Harris, James Lee Tart, B.M. Milstead, William Lawrence Dunham, Clarence James Lanier.
From the state of Missouri, Andrew Jackson Russell, Charles J. Kinzer, John Henry Keller, Ronald Eugene Strittmutter, S. David Nelson, Paul Allen Clark, Blake Curtis Snyder.
From the state of Nebraska, Gregory Keith Hamill. From the state of New Hampshire, John Stratton Walker, Sr. And from the state of New Jersey, Nikhilin Semin.
Continuing from the state of New Jersey, Frankie Lamar Williams, Sean Amon Cullen, William George Fearon, John Mark Cortazzo.
From the state of New Mexico, Clint E. Corvinas, Jose Ismael Chavez, Apolonio Pino, Jose Antonio Grego, and Ryan Sean Thomas.
From the state of New York, Bartholomew Purdy, Hugh McGovern, Jeremiah Murphy, Peter A. Mallon, William McConnell, Alex W. Baez, Alec W. Herman, Angel Antonio Cray, Angelo Peluso Jr., Anthony DeHues, Barry Galfano, Brian S. Muhammad, Carlos J. Ocasio.
Continuing from the state of New York, Christopher Strucker, Claire T. Hanrahan, Corey J. Diaz, David Mahmoud, Donald G. Feezer, Edward C. Gilpin, Edward M. Ferraro, Edwin Ortiz.
Continuing from the state of New York, Francis Thomas Patone, Frank G. Macri, Frank M. Belusi, Garrett S. Danza, Gary G. Mosberg, George Mon Cheng Wong, Gerald Rex, Gerard Thomas Bayrott.
Continuing from the state of New York, Jacqueline McCarthy, James Guida, James John Albanese, John E. Goggin, John F. Christofferson, John J. Marshall, Joseph Edward Seabrook, Kevin Anthony Zadaruski,
Continuing from the state of New York, Kevin George Hawkins, Luis G. Fernandez, Madeline Carlo, Martin Tom, Michael J. McHugh, Michael P. Morales, Michael R. Henry, Michael W. Ryan.
Continuing from the state of New York, Patrice M. Ott, Paul J. Tizzulo, Paul Michael Ferrara, Perry T. Villani, Rebecca A. Buck, Renee Dunbar, Richard Jakubowski, Richard Daniel Winter.
Continuing from the state of New York, Richard G. Holland, Robert Nicasio, Robert A. Zane, Jr., Robert B. Helmke, Robert M. Emer, Robert V. Oswayne, Jr., Robert W. Williamson, Roberto L. Rivera.
Continuing from the state of New York, Ronald G. Becker, Jr., Sandra Y. Adrian, Stephen P. Scala, Stephen Hom, Stuart F. Fiskin, Vito S. Morrow, William J. Holfester, Nancy Vile, Neely Wicks, Samuel Calvert.
Continuing from the state of New York, Koval Chase Pierce, Paul R. Stewart, Timothy P. Pratt, Fred Gusson, William F. Cullen, Kerry Joseph Winters, Sr., Anthony Majori.
From the state of North Carolina, John Thomas Eisenhower, Amos Monroe Bordeaux, Grover Cleveland Quinn, Jr., Joseph D. Whitaker, William G. Holler, Charlie Wells Dunn, Timothy James Brackeen.
From the state of North Dakota, Jason David Moser. From the state of Ohio, Frank Wilson, John M. Cohn, Aaron Jackson Christian, Frederick Frank Kuntz, John Manning, Stephen Michael Smith, Thomas Wayne Cottrell Jr., Carl Mays Etherington, Sean Richard Johnson, Roy E. Carter, Kenneth Velez.
From the state of Oklahoma, Robert Patrick Flickinger, William Dutton Hutchins, John Lewis Wilson, Trey Brenton Pritchard. From the state of Oregon, Jason Michael Gooding.
From the state of Pennsylvania, Andrew J. Conroy, John Mankos, Martin F. Wendt, Thomas J. O'Sullivan, Frank X. Mooney, Mayor Van Leeuwen, and Scott Leslie Basham.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Edward A. Way III, James Golden, Lloyd Elwood Yoder, Anthony Maslowski, George Dworsky, Alvin Barrett, Samuel B. Eldridge.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Peter Griffin, Christopher David Moles, Mylan Barber, Walter Allen Powell, Charles Beecham, Landon Eugene Weaver. Walter John DeWitt III. Anthony John Notero.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, James J. McVeary, John Dando, John Simon DeRubo, Peter J. Cromer, Robert Flenner, Ralph Claire Herod, Charles Davidson, George Ridgway.
From the state of South Carolina, Robert Hassel, Alan Lee Jacobs, Christian J.D. Wolf, Howard H. Franklin.
From the state of Tennessee, Martin Taze Sturgill II, Zachary Tyler Larnard, Sean Lewis Allred, Kenny Ray Mose, Verdell Smith Sr., James Jackson Lee, Orville Amos Moss, Dadrion Rashawn Frazier, Robert Tillman Thomason.
From the state of Texas, Justin Ryan Sherlin, Amir Abdul Khalik, Marco Antonio Zarate, James O. Long, Marion Abe Bledsoe, Brent Allen Thompson, Lorne Bradley Aarons, Michael Joseph Smith, Michael Leslie Kroll, Patricio Enrique Zamaripa, Kenneth Hubert Maltby, Thad DeWitt West.
Continuing from the state of Texas, David Ortiz, David Stefan Hofer, Robert E. Ransom, Stacy Allen Bumgardner, Indy Obong Ekpanya, Benjamin Marconi, Kenneth Joseph Stars, Calvin Marcus McCullers Jr., Mary Ann Johnson, Jeffrey Don Nichols, Ben Pennington, Robert Ernest Hunt.
From the state of Utah, Leon Albert May, Douglas Scott Barney II, Eric Dale Ellsworth, Cody James Brotherson.
From the state of Virginia, Harvey Snook III, Ashley Marie Gwendon, Chad Philip Deermeyer.
From the state of Washington, George H. Yeaman, Jr., John Frederick Mines, R. Jake Gutierrez.
From the state of West Virginia, Robert Long, Roy C. Knotts, Eugene Crum, Joseph George Ortero.
From the state of Wisconsin, Charles William Goodell, Adam John Hartwig, Dan Thomas Glaze Jr., Michael Joshua Ventura.
From the federal law enforcement agencies, Jerry D. Job, Paul H. Wilson, Robert Martin Roth, Stephen A. Carr, Wesley J. Yu, William Robert Craig, Casey Elena Ruiz, Nathan Cole Sartain, James Dennis McNaughton.
Continuing from the federal law enforcement agencies, David Gomez, Jose Daniel Barraza, Manuel Alejandro Alvarez, Javier Vega Jr.
Continuing with federal law enforcement agencies, Brian P. Beliso.
Continuing federal agencies, J. Scott McGuire.
Continuing for the federal agencies, Patrick Thomas Carruthers.
Continuing federal agencies, Charles Gleason Benz, James Stephen Collins.
From the Railroad Police Departments, Thomas P. Griffin, Stephen W. Parton, John L. Beiser, Lester E. Rowland, Milford James Merrifield, Lloyd James Spower.
From the U.S. Territory of Guam, Siegfried D.R. Mortera. From the U.S. Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Edwin R. Pavon Robles, Luis A. Melendez Maldonado, Victor M. Rosado Rosa, and Valdemir Rivera Santiago.
Out of respect for the officer and his family, from the state of Idaho, Morley H. Cannon. May these heroes of America rest in peace, and may they and their families always be remembered and honored. Behind every name read here tonight, and on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, are stories and memories that burn brightly, tonight and always. Stories that inspire us, and memories that cannot be extinguished. As a symbol of that eternal remembrance, we will now light the memorial candle. And I would ask Attorney General Sessions and COPS National President Brenda Donner to please come forward and do the honor. The flame will then be passed to each of you with the help of the trustees of the concerns of police survivors.
May your dreams bring you peace in the darkness. May you always rise over the rain. May the light from above always lead you to love. May you stay in the arms of the angels.
They are mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters. They are chiefs, sheriffs, constables, deputies, troopers, and special agents. They are our colleagues, protectors, and friends. But there is one word that fits them all: hero. Not because of how they died, but because of how they lived. Tonight, we honor the fallen and all who continue to follow in their footsteps of law enforcement service, members of America's thin blue line of righteousness, protection, and hope. It is a warning for the wicked and a beacon of hope for the righteous. In cities and towns across our nation, places like Dallas, Texas, Des Moines, Iowa, and Harford County, Maryland, our law enforcement professionals have never stood taller nor prouder. We have witnessed their tireless devotion to public safety. We have been humbled by their selfless displays of courage, and we have mourned when they fell in the performance of duty. They advance when others flee, fight when others cower, stand up for what is right when others stand by. Common men and women inspired to perform uncommon acts of courage and compassion, always willing to put the safety and welfare of others above their own. With 21,183 names now etched on the walls at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial a few blocks from here, we stand shoulder to shoulder to honor these men and women who are now part of law enforcement's eternal legacy of honor. But with the addition of 394 new names on the National Monument to the Fallen, we cannot ignore the terrible price that so many have paid to help harden a protective shield of freedom and public safety. We honor and remember those fallen heroes now and always, just as we honor and remember their surviving family members and colleagues. To all of the survivors who have joined us here tonight, please know that you and your loved one will never be forgotten. As we raise our candles skyward in silent tribute, let us solemnly pledge to always remember and cherish those who have fallen, those who have been left behind, and those who continue to serve.
They say there's a place where dreams have all gone. They never said where, but I think I know. It's miles through the night, just over the dawn, on the road that will take me home. I know in my bones I've been here before. The ground feels the same, though the land's been torn. I've a long way to go. The stars spine. Don't lead me astray. Don't try to stop me. Don't stand in my way. I'm bound for the hills where cool waters flow. On this road that will take me home. Love waits for me round the bend, leads me endlessly on. Surely sorrow shall find their end, and all our troubles will be gone, and we'll know what we've lost and all that we've won when the road finally takes me home. I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm
Ladies and gentlemen, for your safety, please carefully extinguish your candles at this time.
At this time, I would like to acknowledge our featured singers and participants who received no introduction. Lieutenant Pauline Wells of the Cambridge, Massachusetts Police Department, who performed Lullaby for a Fallen Soldier and Going Home. Thank you, Pauline. And Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police Officer Steve Butterbrot for his bagpipe solo, Going Home. Officer Butterbrot performed at the first Candlelight Vigil 29 years ago, and he's been part of every vigil since. Thank you, Stevie. Please rise for the retreat of colors. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremony. We thank you for coming, and may God bless all of you, and may God bless all of America's peace officers and their families.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the Candlelight Vigil this evening. Please note that the Memorial Funds Retail Center is located at 309 E Street Northwest in the lower level of First Trinity Lutheran Church and will be open from 9 p.m. till midnight. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, survivor buses departing to the Alexandria Mark Center will leave from 7th Street facing the Washington Monument, and buses departing to the Crystal City hotels will leave from 3rd Street, which is located behind the stage facing the Capitol. Ladies and gentlemen, all objects left at the memorial walls at the conclusion of National Police Week will become the property of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Should you wish to remove a personal item that you displayed, please do so by 6 a.m. Thursday, May 18th. Thank you.